This episode is sponsored by Squarespace. Whether you need a domain, website, or online store, make your next move with Squarespace.
About 3 years ago, I made a video showing you the lighting setup here at home in my little garage studio. And back then, the main lights I was using in there were my big Bowen strobe lights, which I used to use for the product photography I did. But since then, I totally changed how I light things in that space. So I thought I'd make this video to show you the lights I'm using today and why I made that change. Cards on the table up front. I used to be a little bit of a strobe snob. If anyone came to me and said, I want to set up my own little studio to shoot portraits or still life or product or food photography, I would always say to them, well, you have to go out and get yourself a set of strobes. I think the sort of reasons I would have given were things like, well, you get better color accuracy out of a good strobe light, or there's more consistency in the light, or there's certainly more power output from a flash. And maybe in the back of my mind, I never would have said this out loud, but I was probably thinking to myself, well, but if you use a strobe in a studio, it somehow makes you more of a proper studio photographer, which of course is ridiculous. I was recently out in New Zealand, and one of the things I was doing there was teaching a couple of workshops on one light portrait photography. And for those workshops, the light that I was teaching with, showing people how to use, were my Godox AD200 flashes, which I still use today and travel with all the time, and I still love those lights. But during one of the workshops, a gentleman put up his hand and asked a very honest question. He said, I find shooting with a strobe or a flash very intimidating because I can't see what sort of light I'm going to get until the moment I hit the shutter. And so I find it difficult during the setup to work out what the light's even going to look like. Would it be a viable option to use constant lights in my little studio at home instead? I said, of course you can, and told him, in fact, that's exactly what I'd done in my own little home portrait studio, is I'd switched out all those strobes and flashes and exchanged them for different sorts of constant lights that I can now use in the same space. And it's been working really well for me. There are a couple of little caveats and places where these LED constant lights don't work quite as well, but I'll explain those too in this video. But let's jump into the studio. I can show you how I've got things set up and the reasons why I made the changes that I did. So first, let me talk about the key light that I use, the kind of main lights that I use. And there are two options I've got. And one is this key light that I've got going on right here. In fact, let me jump out for a quick second here. And let me show you. This is the Aperture 120D Mark II with this, which is one of my favorite modifiers at the moment. It's the Pixar Pro Rice Bowl 65W, which is kind of like a beauty dish inside. It's got a little plate inside, but it's also got, you can see, 2 layers of diffusion on the front, including that beauty dish little plate inside to kind of break everything up. It's got a white interior, so a nice soft light comes out, and you can stick a grid on the front as well. So that's one of the main sort of key lights that I use. I've had this Aperture 120D for ages, but that's one of those old kind of monoblock style lights, which means they're bigger. The carry case for it is sort of so big, it's a bit of a pain to lug around. And I've been trying to work out how can I get all this kit that I can use indoors in my studio like this, but also be able to travel with it. How can I get it as small as possible? So recently I've been using the Zhiyun lights a lot. And this is one that's become sort of the one that I've replaced this with. I travel with this more often. This just sort of sits in my studio now because it's actually more powerful than that 120D, but it's a much smaller light in itself. So that's the actual light. And this is it's the Molus G200 from Zhiyun, and it comes with a little power bank as well. So this daisy chains onto this, which goes into the wall. Built-in fan on the back so it stays cool. You really can't hear a thing, but this puts out more power than that big thing. So I don't travel with that a lot now. This is now my kind of go-to travel key light. And the nice thing about this is it has the Bowens mount on the front, so it works with all my modifiers that I already have, including this Rice Bowl 65, which is my kind of favorite modifier at the moment. But the lights get even smaller from there. And let me show you the smallest I've got. And I've got 2 of these. This is the Zhiyun X60, little 60 watt light. I mean, that is just tiny, isn't it? Again, built-in fan, LED light on the front there. This doesn't have the Bowens mount. It's obviously just way too small for that. So Zhiyun have this little proprietary mount which they use for their lights, which will give you like a little reflector like this. You could have a diffusion dome on it. Honestly, that doesn't really cut it for me because that's still a really, really small modifier. So even though you've got a little dome to soften it up, it's still going to push out fairly hard light because the light source itself is quite small. But the nice thing about these lights is Zhiyun also make this little bracket where your light can actually just clip onto the back of this bracket, which then just sits on a light stand with this little clamp, and you can also sort of rotate the head direction as well. And then this is a Bowens mount. So again, that is tiny, and 60 watts is surprisingly powerful in a space that you can actually control the light with. And the nice thing about these is these are fully RGB, so I can play with the color on these, change it to any color I want, and you can come up with some really kind of creative options as well. And then the last one to mention, and I've now got 3 of these because these are just amazing. And just heads up that Zhiyun actually sent me this particular light for free. This isn't a review. They don't even know I'm making this video. I haven't promised to say anything about it. They just said, we'd like you to have this and give it a go. This is the Molus X100, so it's a 100 watt light. There are a few versions of this. I've got 2 of the older versions of this. This is a new kind of branded Cam Mackey with Zhiyun. They kind of did a collaboration together. Cam Mackey's a YouTube filmmaker. You should check his channel out. He's actually pretty good. The nice thing about this is, and because a filmmaker's actually been involved in designing this light, it does some pretty cool things. So in the box, it comes with a proper kind of Fresnel head, which multiplies the light from the front of this as well. So it will really kind of kick up the light. And you can also snap on a set of barn doors as well. So you can kind of control that light as well. You could sort of really narrowly focus it down and sort of shape that light if you really want to. So this is a great little bit of filmmaking kit, and it's tiny, absolutely miniature. And the great thing about these lights as well, and the reason they're brilliant for travel, is they each come with a battery that can be simply charged with USB. So I can just plug this in the side, and it'll take a second, but if I just hold this power button down, and then I rotate the select button, that will fire up the light, which I can then just run off battery power for quite a while actually, or I can plug it into the mains like I was before. So you can see that is a pretty powerful light. At the moment that's on 20%, that light. So lots of different modes on this. I can be using this, I can change the hue of the light. So you can see they'll dial through different color options. Very, very versatile little light this. I can change the saturation, or I can just put it into RGB mode where I can dial in whatever color I want. Or there's some sort of creative modes, which to be frank, I'm never going to be using. Or we can just use it as a daylight balance light, which is what I use it for most of the time. And you can just set the Kelvin value. So at the moment it's 5500, and you can see how insanely light that is. I mean, that at the moment is on 75%. And it is like blindingly light out of such a tiny little package like this. So this has become a fantastic travel option for me for filmmaking, where I can go with just this one light if I want to in a very, very small package and be able to do some pretty incredible stuff with it just out the box with not too much weight. So I'll show you quickly actually, here we go. This is probably what I would travel with for filmmaking and photography. If I want to do interviews and just take one light with me, I can fit just this, that's it, everything in my suitcase. And you can see, even with, you know, a medium-sized suitcase that I check in on an airplane, that's not going to take up too much space in my suitcase, but that gives me a really powerful light that can also be battery powered with interesting modifiers, and a light stand, which is a Manfrotto. It's nice that the kind of legs fold in on itself to save space. A little umbrella head on the top here, and a nice big diffusion umbrella, because I think that together is pretty much the smallest way you're going to get a light stand and a modifier to soften up your light for interviews. So this has been a really, really great setup. And the one other thing that they came out with this, have I got it here? Yes, is this. This has been really interesting. I haven't used this yet, but I think it might have some interesting applications for photography and for video. It actually comes with, or you might have to buy this separately actually, I'm not sure if it's an extra accessory, is this spotlight. And it is a proper spotlight with a lens inside it, where you can actually shape the light coming out of it and sort of really spotlight whatever you want to. It can be a round spot or a square. You can kind of cut the light however you want. And on top of that, this little spotlight thing comes with a set of gobos, which, you know, some people think are a little bit gimmicky. Personally, I'm not sure I'd ever use them, but never say never. There might be some kind of creative portrait options. So for example, here's one that's just a little window shape, right? So if I slot this in, I might be able to sort of throw, let's pull this all the way out on the sides, like so. And then we're going to focus with this little lens on the front. And then we can see that we've got a little window shape. Now I'd have to be way further back than this, obviously, but you can imagine that you could start to create some, I'm just going to jump in front of you, you could start to create maybe some sort of interesting background options for interviews, some shapes and stuff. Let's sort of dial this and focus it a bit. I mean, I tend to agree with people who sort of think this might be a little bit of a gimmicky thing, but I could see there might be applications where I'd want to use something like that, just for a bit of background interest. On a plain background like this, I think it's sort of too obvious, but I can imagine throwing a window shape in the same direction as the light in the room over a bookcase, for example, just to give a little bit of visual interest. But what I love about these kits is there is so much you can do with them that's so small in terms of the size and the weight you're carrying around. It really gives you a lot of creative options for kind of RGB color, all the different sorts of modifiers that you can take around with you. And especially for my little travel kit, to be able to take something like this and just run and gun with kind of one interview light that's tiny in a suitcase, it's been a bit of a game changer. So why have I decided to move to constant lights like this and away from those big studio strobes you saw me using in this studio space a few years back? And I think one of the biggest reasons is I've kind of changed my mind about using strobe because of how the subject deals with it. So you might have noticed that last year I actually did a video where I was photographing my friend Vla in the style of kind of the Martin Scholler portraits with the two kind of strip lights right in your face. And I just realized, even before I started shooting that, that's going to be a horrible experience for my friend who's going to have these two strobes going off in their face. I'm just going to blind him. And I've seen doing strobe portraits with clients that sometimes they just walk away kind of frazzled, and kind of the anticipation of the flash firing even gets people to tense up. Whereas if you have a constant light like I've got at the moment, I can make a great portrait out of this, and there's no strobe in my face, there's nothing flashing. I'm going to get used to this lighting and just relax, and I'm going to be able to talk to my subject as the photographer and calm them down, rather than just firing flashes in their faces all the time. But the biggest reason I like shooting with lights like this in my studio and out in the world these days is because I am a hybrid shooter, which means that I shoot as much video as I do stills, and these lights I can do both with. I don't need two sets. I used to have this ridiculous system where I had these kind of aperture lights, and then I also had my Bowen strobes and two sets of roller bags and everything else. But I suddenly realized, like, why am I doing that? Why not get a small set of LEDs that are super versatile, that aren't going to blind my subjects, and I could film an interview with them and then just put the video away and just pick up my stills and start to shoot stills with them. In the same lighting setup, I could get both jobs done. There aren't two sets of gear. I don't have to switch anything around. This is good for both things that I do. And also, I've been in situations where I've wanted to get behind the scenes footage of me taking portraits. But of course, if I set the video camera up off to the side, the room's really dark. You can't really see the lighting on the face until that strobe fires. And then the whole screen just fills with white. You can't really see what's going on anyway. And then it goes back to dark. So I couldn't film those behind the scenes while I'm shooting stills. But with this lighting, I can do both at the same time. While I'm shooting that footage, you can see what I'm getting with my subject in terms of my lighting. You can see me. You can see exactly what I'm working with and what I'm thinking, even before I get to showing you those final images. So for me, I think I'm set on this for a while. I want to stick with smaller, more powerful LEDs that I can use for both jobs and still have lots of options in a really lightweight package that I can travel around with. Let me give you an important caveat about where lights like this definitely don't work and why I've still hung on to my AD200s. And I do love these Godox strobes. They are super portable and very, very powerful. So I still use these Godox AD200s. These are sort of 3 speed lights worth of power in one body, also quite travel friendly and small, that I can stick in a bracket and through a modifier in the same way. And this is a strobe, it's not a constant light. And the great thing about these is I can use high-speed sync with these and play with the shutter speed and darken down the ambient light outside. If I tried to shoot a portrait outdoors on a sunny day with one of these little lights, you just wouldn't see it. It's not powerful enough to be able to shoot those portraits and mix it with the ambient light in a way that's really going to affect the shot and make a difference. So I still hang on to these 8200s. I have 3 of them in a Pelly case. I made a video about them years ago. They are still my go-to portrait lights for times when the light, the ambient light in the scene is going to be very bright. And I know that I will be able to battle that light with these lights. So I haven't moved totally to constant lights. I use them here in the studio and I use them when I travel for video, absolutely. And if I can control the ambient in the room, this is what I'll go to. But anything else, if I need that power, I still go to flash. So if you're thinking of setting up your studio and using these constant lights the way that I am here in my little garage studio, you can absolutely do it. You just need to be able to control the ambient light in the room. So you either need to close all the curtains on a bright sunny day because these won't battle that bright sunlight coming in through the windows, or work out how to block them a bit or diffuse that light coming through. If it's a cloudy day, this is fine. You can definitely mix it with that ambient light and get quite creative. You can do some interesting things. You also need to turn off all the ceiling lights in the room because you don't want that kind of ugly tungsten light from your ceiling mixing with the beautiful lighting that you're setting up very deliberately. So just make sure that if you go this constant route, that you can control the ambient light in the space that you're shooting. And then this, for me certainly, is really a viable option. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope you could see that there is a place for strobes and there's a place for constant lights. And you just need to work out what you actually need the light to do to be able to pick which works well for you. But for me, for my own little home studio, I use almost only constant lights now. And beyond choosing the right light for the right situation, I really don't think it matters what you choose, especially in terms of being a legitimate photographer or not. And especially for beginners, I think choosing constant lights is a fantastic way to learn because you can teach yourself what lighting actually does. You can see in real time what putting a different modifier on it does, what changing your distance from subject to does, or changing the angle of the light on the subject. So being able to play that way and actually see what the light is doing rather than having to wait for that flash to fire is a really fast way to learn how to build good looks for your lighting. If you're a hybrid shooter like me who shoots stills and video, I think it's an exciting time to be alive because we live in an age where lighting is developing really, really fast. And this new constant LED lighting is getting so small and so powerful and giving us so many options that we can now travel with a very small kit. We can set it up to shoot a portrait of a subject for stills. And we can use that same lighting and tweak it a little bit and then set our camera up and film a video interview with them as well, all out of a very small bag. But the bottom line is there's no right light that you should be using, and don't let other photographers look down on you because you choose constant light over strobe. And I've heard people start to tell other photographers you're not a proper studio photographer unless you use strobe. Of course, that's rubbish. At the end of the day, light is light. And if anyone gives you a hard time about it, just make great images because I find that usually shuts them up. Before I go, I just want to remind you about my Parable magazine. If you're looking for a way to support this channel, this is a fantastic way to do it, buying copies of this magazine. I'm really, really proud of these. There's now 5 editions available. Each one is writing and photography on a different theme, and you can either grab a copy like these in physical format, which is printed on beautiful uncoated matte paper, Or you can grab a digital version which you can download from my website, which includes a PDF of the magazine and an MP3 file of me reading the magazine to you. And lastly, thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode. If you need a website or a domain, they're a fantastic option. I've used them myself as my website of choice for over a decade now. Probably my favorite thing about Squarespace is how clean and minimalist the designs look and how clean my website looks as a result. When I first put my website together years ago, I really wanted something where my images did the talking and the design was just clean around it. But because I'm not a web designer, I had no idea how to do that. But with Squarespace, the templates are put together by professional designers and they give you enough control to customize it, but not so much freedom that we get out of hand and mess it up, because every photographer thinks they're a designer, but I know for myself I'm not. I like the boundaries that make my work look good, but don't let me mess it up too much. And in the back end, it couldn't be simpler to use. It's just a case of dragging in text blocks and image blocks and galleries and videos and contact forms and setting up a store. It couldn't be simpler.
Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and go to squarespace.com/Sean Tucker to get 10% off your first purchase.